The fires of Aurelian Ridge smoldered for days after the rescue, a scar on the horizon that refused to fade. Ash drifted into the upper winds like gray snow, coating the hulls of ships and the shoulders of those who stood watching the blackened expanse. Among them was Kale, the human who should have walked away, who should have left her there. But he hadn't. He sat now at the edge of a makeshift camp, bandages coiled around his palms, skin raw from heat burns. His breath still caught when he thought of the moment, the impossible weight of her body against his, the way she had trusted him enough to go still as he tore her free. She was alive because he'd refused to think of how small he was, how weak he was compared to her. He had acted, and that was all. Her name lingered in his memory like smoke, Serenia. She had whispered it just once, in the haze before unconsciousness took her. The sound of it had been both alien and familiar, rolling soft and low, like the syllables of an old song. Now, she lay inside the med dome, her giant form curled in restless slumber beneath luminous drapes of healing mesh. Even weakened, even scarred by fire, she was breathtaking. Her skin shimmered faintly with streaks of silver bioluminescence, as though galaxies had been etched into her veins. Her chest rose and fell in slow, thunderous rhythm, each breath shaking the air of the chamber. Kale found himself pausing at the entrance more than once, caught between awe and discomfort. He had saved her life. That was all. He had no place watching her. And yet, every time he turned to leave, something in the silence urged him back. The medics whispered about it, the strangeness of it. A human, slight and mortal, dragging a giantess from the flames. They spoke of her father's coming with unease, for he was no ordinary figure. High Lord Varian, ruler of the Orionic Dominion, commanded fleets that spanned light years, and his people held laws older than Earth's recorded history. Laws about debts, laws about blood, laws about marriage. Kale didn't believe it. Not really. The idea was absurd. He had acted on instinct, not to gain reward, not to claim someone's daughter as his bride. And yet, in the shifting quiet of the camp, as ships of impossible scale began to fill the skies, the weight of inevitability pressed heavier on him with each passing hour. The night before Varian's arrival, Kale found himself near the med dome again. A soft glow leaked through its walls, painting his skin in pale blue light. He didn't mean to intrude, but the air inside seemed different, as though someone had opened the door between worlds. Serenia's eyes were open. For the first time, she looked at him not as a faceless blur who had pulled her from fire, but as a man. Her gaze was vast, oceanic, threaded with exhaustion and unspoken pride. When she spoke, her voice was hoarse yet resonant, each word trembling through the chamber. "You should not have risked yourself," she said. Kale hesitated, words caught in his throat. He wanted to tell her he hadn't thought, that the flames had left no time for reason. But standing in the light of her gaze, every excuse felt thin. "I couldn't leave you," he said at last, his voice rough, almost embarrassed. A silence stretched between them. Her eyes softened, though only slightly, as though some guarded part of her had loosened against her will. Then she closed them again, breath shuddering, and sank back into sleep. Kale stepped out into the night, but the echo of her words lingered in his chest. By dawn, the sky broke open with light. Ships descended in formation, colossal vessels shaped like burning crowns, their hulls alive with rivers of gold energy. The earth trembled as they landed. The Orionic banners unfurled, streaming like fire across the wind. And when the High Lord Varian emerged, towering, his robes woven with living crystal, his presence commanding silence across the plain, it became clear that the whispers had not been exaggeration. The ruler of 1,000 stars fixed his gaze on Kale, and with a voice that shook the air like thunder rolling through caverns, he declared the law that could not be broken. "You saved my daughter. Now you must accept what follows. By our blood oath, by the ancient rites, she is yours, and you are Hayes." The camp erupted in stunned disbelief. Kale could only stand frozen, the weight of a galaxy pressing down on his chest, as the impossible truth carved itself into his life. Kale didn't answer the High Lord, not because he accepted, but because speech abandoned him somewhere between disbelief and dread. Around him, the camp had gone still, like the world was holding its breath. No one stepped forward to intervene. No envoy tried to reinterpret the command. The law had been spoken, and on some worlds, that was the same as fate. Two of Varian's honor guards stood at the edge of the crowd, giant figures with pale metallic skin and eyes like forged stone. They didn't reach for Kale to surround him, but their presence was a silent boundary. He wasn't a prisoner, yet he was no longer free to walk away. He felt eyes on him. Some human, some alien, some fearful, some fascinated. He didn't look back at any of them. His gaze drifted over the scorched horizon instead, the one that had seemed so wide just yesterday. Varian approached him with steps that carried the weight of an empire. Up close, the High Lord was even more imposing, broad-shouldered, robed in black and silver that shifted like liquid armor, each thread alive with faint light. His face was carved in regal lines, unscarred by age or battle, but his eyes held the same severity of someone who had lived through centuries of unspoken decisions. "You do not understand the full measure of what you have done," Varian said, not in accusation, but in truth. Kale found his voice only because silence felt heavier than fear. "I didn't rescue her for a reward." "Which is why the bond holds even deeper," the High Lord replied. There was no threat in his tone. That made it harder to bear. Before Kale could speak again, the earth trembled as another ship descended. This one was smaller, sleeker, formed of glass and metal that shifted colors with every angle of light. A healer's craft, he realized, too elegant for war, too precise for anything but recovery. Serenia was brought out from the med dome under a shield of pale luminescence, her body still healing. Even with her strength drained, she remained a presence that reshaped the space around her. 6 meters tall at full height, though lying suspended by antigrave bands made her seem caught between vulnerability and myth. Her eyes opened when the ship doors parted. Kale stood in her line of sight. For a long moment, she didn't blink. No one spoke to her, not her guards, nor the healers, nor even her father. It was as if a silence was part of the ceremony already set in motion. 2 attendants bowed their heads and addressed Kale instead. "You will accompany her to the Dominion flagship," one said. "Preparation for formal binding will begin upon arrival." Binding. The word struck like cold metal inside his chest. Kale stepped back, not in fear but in protest he hadn't shaped yet. "You can't just decide this. I'm not one of you." Varian regarded him steadily. "The law is older than the Empire. You save her life by risking your own. That act forged an accord between souls. We do not sever such bonds. We honor them." "I didn't agree to be part of your customs," Kale said, quiet to this time. Not defiant, just lost. The High Lord's gaze narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in a kind of restraint that suggested he had already considered every objection Kale might raise. "If you refuse the bond, another price must be paid." "What kind of price?" Varian didn't blink. Blood equal to the life preserved. A death in place of union. The world around Kale seemed to tilt. He looked at Serenia again, her breath slow, her expression unreadable. But something in her eyes, something like guilt or conflict or disbelief at this moment was real. Before Kale could respond, a hum split the air as a shuttle extended its ramp. The attendants motioned him forward. He didn't move. One of them hesitated, then spoke more gently. "She will not be forced. But the law does not wait forever. If she awakes fully and names him as her rescuer, the rite will seal." Kale hadn't realized it was possible to feel both trapped and strangely responsible at the same time. He looked at his hands, bandaged, burned, still aching from the heat that had nearly taken them both. He remembered pulling at the metal crushing her leg, remembered thinking he might die with her if he didn't get her free. There had been no thought of laws, or futures, or vows. And yet, here it was, demanding shape. Someone tugged at his sleeve. He turned and saw Mara, a medic who treated his burns. Her voice was low, urgent. "If you go with him, at least you'll be alive long enough to understand what choice you're making. If you don't..." She didn't need to finish. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He stepped onto the ramp. Above the world he knew, the sky filled with ships older than his species' memory, and somewhere within one of them, a woman he had dragged from fire waited to wake, and speak a word that might bind them beyond either of their intentions. The transport shuttle rose through the ashen sky with a smoothness that made Kale feel weightless, though not at ease. Through the small viewing pane, the camp below shrank into a patch of scorched color, surrounded by ships far larger than anything humans built. The Dominion's vessels were crafted like living monuments, curved, luminous, layered with veins of light that pulsed like breath beneath metal skin. No one spoke during ascent. 2 attendants stood by the entryway, and across from Kale sat a quiet guard whose armor shifted tone with his pulse. Everything about them suggested strength held in silence. Kale kept his hands in his lap, his thoughts circling the same impossible truth. He had stepped into a world that wasn't built for him. When the shuttle docked inside the flagship, the shift in air was immediate, cooler, denser, faintly metallic with an undertone of something floral and unfamiliar. The corridor they entered looked alive. Not moving, but responsive, metallic walls veined with faint light that flickered gently with footsteps, as if the ship could feel them. They brought him to a chamber too large to be called a room, but too intimate to be a hall. Translucent panels layered the ceiling, through which the colors of space, violet, silver, deep indigo, bled softly. The attendants gestured to a low platform with a curved seat shaped more for comfort than restraint. "You will wait here," one said. Not a command, simply a statement of sequence. Kale Saturday. His thoughts tried to form plans, questions, refusals, but none held. He didn't even know what he was waiting for, judgment, negotiation, or the woman whose life he'd pulled from the fire. Minutes passed, maybe more. Then he felt it before he heard anything, like weight moving through the air. He toned. Serenia entered, not on a stretcher, not bound by healers or machines. She walked on her own, though carefully, each step deliberate. Her height made the chamber feel smaller. Pale light shimmered along the healed burns on her arms and legs, like constellations mending themselves. Her eyes, silver-gray with a faint interior glow, settled on him. For a moment, neither spoke. She took in the room, the attendants, the guards at a distance, and then him. It wasn't a look of recognition in the way humans understood it, but it wasn't indifference. Something in her gaze lingered, as though his presence stirred memories she hadn't decided to acknowledge. Kale stood without meaning to. "You're awake." It sounded foolish the second he said it, but he didn't take it back. She studied him, slowly, intently. When she spoke, her voice carried the depth of a distant storm. "You breathed smoke until your lungs bled. Your hands should not have been able to move. Yet you lifted what even our warriors could not." He didn't know if that was gratitude, confusion, or the beginning of something harder. "I didn't think about it," he said. "You were alive. That was reason enough." Her expression shifted, but only slightly. On someone her size, that was like witnessing weather change. A soft tone resonated through the chamber. From an archway behind her, High Lord Varian stepped into view. He did not address Kale first. He spoke to his daughter in their native tongue, a language that echoed like low chimes struck underwater. The words were too fluid to decipher, but Kale understood the tone. Inquiry, then confirmation. Serenia answered without looking away from Kale. Only when she finished did Varian face the human. She has spoken the truth of it. You saved her with no shield, no exosuit, and no bargain. The accord is sealed. Kale felt the statement like a closing door. You're talking about marriage as though it's a transaction written into nature. Varian's eyes hardened, but his tone didn't rise. Not transaction. Alignment. To sever it now would break a law older than our dominion over stars. Serenia's gaze did not leave Kale. He couldn't tell if she was waiting for him to speak, or bracing for what he might say. "I don't belong to your people," he said, the words low but steady. "And she doesn't belong to me." For the first time, Serenia stepped closer, not enough to intimidate, but enough that the air between them felt charged. Her voice was quieter when she spoke, though still carrying resonance. "You pulled me from death with hands too small to close around my wrist." "Why?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. Anything he said would sound simple, and somehow that felt dishonest. After a long breath, he tried anyway. "Because I couldn't stand there and watch you burn." She absorbed that, not with disbelief, but with careful thought, as though weighing a truth she had never been offered in that form. A silence grew between them, not empty, but waiting. Then Varian spoke again. "There will be a convergence council in 2 cycles. You may speak before them if you wish to contest the binding. But if you do, be prepared to offer the blood price." Kale didn't ask for details. He already understood. Serenia blinked once, slowly, an expression he couldn't read, and yet somehow felt. The attendant stepped back. The guards remained still. And Kale realized something else. For all the ceremony, for all the law, the choice was no longer entirely theirs to make, yet neither of them had spoken a word that would complete or break what had begun in fire. Kale wasn't confined to a cell, but the room they gave him felt like one anyway. Too tall, too polished, too silent. The walls shimmered faintly with threads of light that pulsed like veins, reacting to movement, or breath, or thoughts. He couldn't tell. There was no door handle, only a panel that recognized the guards, but not him. They'd said he was an honored bond claimant. It sounded suspiciously like a prisoner with better lighting. He didn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the flames again, saw a shape buried beneath wreckage, saw his fingers tearing into metal even as his skin peeled. He heard her voice replay, that low storm tone asking why he'd done it. He still didn't have an answer that made sense. When the door finally opened, it wasn't a guard, it was her. Serenia stepped through the threshold without escort. She had traded the healing mesh for garments that moved like water over her frame, layered in muted silver and charcoal. Her presence filled the room without her trying. She could have been a storm in human shape, restrained only by will. She didn't sit. She stood near the center, eyes traveling over him in a way that wasn't unkind, but not soft either. "You have not eaten," she said. He almost laughed at how gently she delivered a statement that sounded like an observation from a physician rather than concern. Hard to find an appetite when everyone thinks I accidentally got engaged to an alien dynasty. Her expression shifted a fraction, something between curiosity and offense. Engagement is not the word. It is oath-binding. It predates empire. I didn't agree to it. You acted. Agreement was sealed in the act. He exhaled, short and tired. Where I come from, saving someone isn't a proposal. She considered that, not dismissively, but with the long patience of someone raised in a culture where words weren't rushed. Where I come from, letting someone take your place in death is the same as offering them your life. We do not leave such things undefined. Kale's jaw tensed. I didn't offer you my life. I just couldn't watch you die. Her gaze lowered, not in shame, but in thought. Intent does not change outcome. Silence draped the space between them, thick but not hostile. He leaned back against the edge of the low sitting frame. Your father said if I refuse, someone has to die in exchange. That real? It is not punishment, she said. It is balance. The bond was forged in mortal cost. To break it would unmake what was preserved. He frowned. That sounds poetic until someone actually bleeds for it. She met his eyes again. You think I want this? He hesitated. I don't know what you want. Her shoulders rose in a slow inhale. I was trained to lead fleets, not dream of pairing. I did not seek this. But the law does not twist itself for my preference. Offer yours. Her honesty, stark and unperformative, left him without a reply. She stepped closer, not looming, but present. In 2 cycles, the Convergence Council will gather. If you choose to contest the binding, you may speak. But they will ask, do you regret saving me? Kale blinked. The question struck harder than he expected. No. Then they will ask, do you reject the vow your act created? That one lodged in his breath. Before he could form an answer, the room lights rippled, an alert in muted gold. Serenia's eyes flicked briefly to the ceiling, then back to him. There are factions who believe you should not speak at all, she said. Calm, but not detached. Meaning what? They'll kill me before council. Her expression didn't change, but her tone deepened. They do not kill within the flagship, but influence can decide what voices are heard. And yours? He asked. You get a say. A pause. Perhaps. But any word I give in your defense would be taken as consent to the binding. And if you don't defend me. She didn't answer immediately. The quiet between them stretched, not empty, but full of unspoken consequences. Finally, she said, then they may claim you acted under desire for glory or gain. They will nullify honor and demand blood price. That's not much of a spectrum. She stepped back, not retreating, but making space. For the first time, something in her gaze softened, not romantically, but in recognition of the impossible. I do not want your death, and I do not want a bond forged in resentment. He let that settle. Then what do you want? For the first time, her composure cracked, not visibly, but like light shifting behind storm clouds. Time and truth, before either of us is handed to the law as though we are already decided. He nodded once, more instinct than agreement. She turned toward the door, then hesitated, not looking back, but listening. If you regret saving me, she said quietly, say it before the council. It will make the break-in cleaner. And you? He asked. Her voice dropped to something almost human. I do not yet know if I regret surviving. Then she left him in the silence she carried with her, one that felt less like absence and more like the space before a decision that could rewrite both their lives. The convergence chamber was a cathedral built for judgment. Its walls weren't stone or steel but living crystal, rising high above until they disappeared into shifting auroras that hummed faintly like distant voices. Every seat was filled. Counselors in flowing robes, warriors with weapons resting like folded wings, and citizens crowding the terraces, their eyes glimmering like twin moons. Kale stood at the center, the only human in sight. No translated chip could soften the weight of their silence. His skin prickled with it, the kind of quiet where a single wrong word could decide his fate. Serenia entered from the opposite arch. She wasn't dressed as the woman he'd seen in quiet halls. Tonight she bore her lineage. Silver armor traced with faintly glowing sigils framed her height, and her dark braids swung against her back like a pendulum of authority. Her face was composed, but her eyes betrayed the storm she was holding back. The High Arbiter rose from the dais, a figure older than memory, her voice weaving into every corner of the chamber without amplification. The human rescuer stands accused not of crime, but of imbalance. His act of salvation forged a bond under law. The council will hear him. Will he accept or refuse the oath binding? Kale felt the question like a blade poised above him. His lungs tightened. He glanced toward Serenia, but she wasn't looking at him. She was staring straight ahead, shoulders drawn like armor against uncertainty. He could say it now. He could say he regretted it. Let them nullify the bond. Let fate claim the balance. But every time he thought of those flames, of a pin beneath the wreckage, of the defiance in her eyes when she had already accepted death, he knew regret was a word he couldn't shape. When he spoke, his voice cracked, but it carried, I don't regret saving her. A murmur ran through the chamber, like a wave breaking. The Arbiter's gaze sharpened. Then do you embrace the bond your action has created? Kale swallowed. Every instinct told him to say no, to fight for the freedom of his own life. But freedom meant her death, or the death of another chosen in his place. And beyond that, something had shifted in him. He remembered Serenia's words in the quiet of his chamber. I do not yet know if I regret surviving. Maybe they were both standing at the edge of a fire neither had asked for, but fire had already rewritten them. He didn't answer at once. Instead, he turned, truly turned, to Serenia. For the first time since the blaze, she met his eyes without armor, without lineage, without law. Just a woman caught in the same impossible tether. You asked me what I want, Kale said, his voice low but steady, for her more than the council. I don't want a vow that makes us prisoners. I don't want resentment. But I won't deny what I did or what it means. Her gaze softened, barely, but enough. A breath, a tremor, a fracture in the wall she wore. Kale lifted his chin. If this bond is real, let it be ours to define. Not a cage, not a chain, something alive. Something we choose, both of us. Silence crashed again, heavier than before. The counselors whispered. Some frowned. Some nodded. The Arbiter's expression was unreadable. Then Serenia stepped forward. One step, then another, until she stood beside him, a shadow engulfing his smaller frame. She spoke not to the council but to him. I will not claim you as law demands, she said, but neither will I cast away the life you gave me. If we are bound, let it be not as ruler and subject, not as debtor and savior. Let it be as equals, if you can bear such weight. Kale's heart stumbled against his ribs. He didn't answer with words. He just held her gaze, and for the first time, neither of them looked away. The Arbiter raised the staff, light flaring through the chamber. Then it is decided. The bond is neither broken nor enforced. It is recognized, living, undefined, chosen. Gasps rippled, but Kale barely heard them. He felt the tension ease, not vanished, not solved, but shifted. For the first time, the fire inside him wasn't just pain. It was possibility. When they left the chamber, the crowds were all echoing behind them. Kale walked to Serena's side. Their hands did not touch. Their shoulders did not brush. But in the quiet between them, something had begun, fragile, dangerous, and alive. Not a sentence, not a cage, not a fairy tale, just the first breath of something neither of them could yet name.